African father in America. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. African father in America. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze.
You are listening to African Father in America podcast by Simon Javan Okelo, live from Seattle, Washington, USA.
Greetings everybody, my name is Simon Javan Okelo and you're listening to the African Father in America podcast. Today I'm extremely privileged to be with my brother Ariel Rosemond, and I'll just go ahead and read for you Ariel's bio so that you have an understanding of who is joining me here for another episode of the African Father in America podcast. Ariel is the American-born son of Haitian immigrants raised in Haiti and in Queens, New York City. Cradled by the sounds, sights, troubles, and celebrations of the world, he served with warriors from all over the country in the United States Navy. He now serves as Associate Director of the Center for Leadership Formation at the Albers School of Business and Economics at Seattle University. There he is a guide, servant, and mentor for entrepreneurs, family business, and corporate leaders seeking to develop their leadership skills and earn a master's degree in business administration. Ariel is also a participant, mentor, and regional board committee chair of the Contemplative Leaders in Action, Seattle, the Pacific Northwest arm of a national nonprofit organization dedicated to development of young professionals. He is a Black man and a father who is hungry for more. Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to request my brother Ariel to share with us his story, especially your upbringing, whether you want to start with the time when you are 5 or 10 or 15 is okay. I just want our, the listeners of the African Father in America to learn about your childhood.
Thank you so much, Simon. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you and the rest of our listeners out there.
Thank you.
I guess it's a good place to start to talk about childhood and fatherhood. Preparing to speak to you today, I thought about being a father myself, and what's the touchstone? Where do you start with that? So, the memories I have, are of first a strong mother, strong father figure, especially at the beginning, around kindergarten or so. I was living in the United States. I was going through Catholic school, in kindergarten, and then my mother and father decided to take us back to Haiti, the island in the Caribbean from which, they came. They had immigrated. And, there's not much that I remember there except that feeling like while I was there, I knew doctors and I knew judges and I knew bankers and I knew market, leaders, and they all were Black. They all were Haitian. I just didn't notice, being that young, the need for diversity or anything like that. It's just, the policeman is Black. And I remember hearing my father and his friends, arguing and laughing, playing dominoes and politics. Yeah. And I remember from afar watching my dad and my mom being the powerful person that people will follow because of his intellect.
Wow.
But this was a small memory until we came back to the United States, and now we were relatively poor. We're in New York City. We're in a little world, if you want. We have immigrants from all over the world, all around us, families trying to make it.
What year was this?
Probably 85, 86, thereabouts. But from my perspective, I'm still a child at this point. I'm in, fifth I'm very, very young. I mean, just coming out of going into middle school at this point. So from a child's mind, but, we would take the train and you could go anywhere in the city. So, I remember my mom taking us into Manhattan and into Little Italy or going into Chinatown. And it really wasn't that difficult for me to see other people just like us, but speaking different languages, different cultures, different things. So,
there are other listeners of this, the African Father in America, that have never been to the US. So I wanted you to just paint for us Chinatown or, a part of New York that you remember very vividly, during this period of your life that can help somebody visualize it.
Sure. So this part of America, right now we're gonna call this New York City, and from a child's eye. First, you're on the train and you use this train to go throughout the city, but over years, over decades, cultures have just populated different areas there. So, when your mom or your school or whatever is taking you to a place, it's not just a location, it's also kind of like tasting another country. And there are parts of other countries and other, like Haiti and people from the Caribbean and, people from Somalia or what have you, Vietnam. These were enclaves that you could go to, and it was sort of easy to see, even though, you're a Black child from maybe a poor part of the city, it wasn't that much of a stretch to see other people from other cultures struggling and experiencing that kind of thing. And that includes the taste and the smells of foods, the beat of the music, traffic. I mean, people yelling at each other, but it's it becomes this culture that's your own. And, there are plenty of cities in the world like this, but
it sounds so much like Africa, especially, there's a market in my hometown called Kibuye, and it's the second largest open air market in East Africa, So there are areas in this market, if you go to those areas, you see endless bananas, If you go to other areas, you see like endless used clothes from the US that are being resold there. And I just love being able to, give people a chance to relive those moments the way you described it. Is there any other part of your childhood, your teenage that you want to share with us as well?
Well, so two things are, I remember as a child, we were Roman Catholic, and it was a Haitian church, so it was a very spiritual part of growing up. But I remember seeing my dad and my mom as, from a child's look, I remember seeing my mother and father being leaders in the community. And it was just little clues, like, people after church would hang out or would go to my father's house, and we would eat Haitian food together. And I remember thinking that we were kings, even though...
Man, what you're saying reminds me of me and my daughters right now, I started One Vibe Africa, a non-profit organization that I've been pushing for like 15 years. But I have a 7-year-old daughter, and sometimes she pulls me on the side and she says, so you want to spread One Vibe all over the world, right? So I have to say yes, because, I can't give a different answer. Just, she just believes in me so much that you describing how you felt like you are kings remind me of sometime how, my kids make me feel,
I understand completely. But, the flip side of that is that feeling I have, that fear of, letting them down, or when will they discover that we're not kings? And so I get that fear too. But those moments when you fill their eyes, and I remember my father filling mine. So these are the things that I wanted to add to for the childhood.
And you are such a humble but very accomplished and hardworking brother. And I didn't know that you served in the US military, and I just know you as an intellectual. And I want you to share with us a little bit about your experience in the US military, like if you were to describe this to an audience in Kenya.
Of course. So I guess the first thing is, graduating from high school and, messing about in college a little bit. And, I'm human. I have plenty of failures, but I found myself lost for a while. And I worked for a man, at a retail store in Manhattan, in the greatest city in the world, and the jewel that was there. And this man was a black man, but he had been to Germany in the army, and he could speak Japanese fluently. And so we would have Japanese tourists coming in Manhattan, and he would be able to speak to the customers. And I was in love with this.
Yeah.
And this man, he was a person in charge there. And we spoke one night, and he explained to me what opportunities there were and fleeting time there was, and different ways that I could serve and find my way. And so from that conversation, I ended up joining the United States Navy. And I remember, my mom was not thrilled, was not pleased with that idea at all. She felt that the military thing was something not for educated, folks, and certainly not going in enlisted like I was. But for me, it was an opportunity to, one, on top, see the world, yes. But another thing, it gave me a chance to kind of try to find my place in it. But in reality, what that looks like is waking up very, very early in the morning, working with dedicated, smart people, but also working with people that, may not be as dedicated or may not be, as smart as whatever as you see around, just finding your way there. And it's hard to figure out one day that, your body is really not your own, that it belongs to something bigger and greater. And so there's a pride there in serving, and having that American flag on your arm, and going to places and feeling like you're actually helping people and representing your country was huge. And so, this is the thing that I enjoyed most about the military. But I also know that over time I made rank, and I became a supervisor, and in my mind, kind of a father figure for some of the younger sailors that followed me. So within like a decade, I had children, even though I didn't have my own biological children. I had folks that were full-grown adults that I was responsible for, at least in my mind. And having that experience, having mentors from, all over the country, white, black, Asian, folks who took me in like I was a son, and teaching me to take these guys in, full-grown adults, as they were sons and daughters. This was an experience that to this day I haven't let go of.
Yeah, it's really like a tribe. Yeah, it's like a tribe. Yeah. So, I wanted you to share with me a little bit about your work as, someone who helps leaders, executive leaders develop their leadership skills and also earn master's degree. Just speak to me a little bit about how you decided to take that path and some of the impacts that you've had in people's lives.
Sure. If you can imagine a paintbrush across a panel, it starts from me being that, little boy in Haiti, far away from, what I thought made me feel special in America, being an American in Haiti, and that desire wanting to do more. And then being lost as a teenager and a young adult trying to figure my way and then finding my way into the military. But I always found peace in being part of something bigger than myself. Mm. So when I left the military, I went for education, and I went for, a master's degree, an MBA. And I found this program at Seattle U Center for Leadership Formation. And here I found people who were in charge, that were executives at other companies, but together we were taught the importance of the dignity of others. Right. And that it's not the title that you carry with you at your job. It's not your 9 to 5 or the suit or the nice watch or whatever. Your significance is in what positive aspects you can build in others, you can inflame in others. And that's what true leadership was. So I left school. I graduated from school, and I enjoyed it. I spent 2 more years working for the Navy, and on the weekends I would come and I would volunteer to, mentor and help tutor MBAs and, what I could. And after a while, an opportunity came in for me to help lead this group that just kind of mentored me through. And when the opportunity came, I took it. I applied for it. I doggedly got it. And since then, I've been able to work with people at companies all over the region, whether Expeditors or Microsoft, Amazon, but small businesses, family businesses, folks who are done with the 9 to 5, like you were telling me, and are going out and deciding to do something more. And, the doctors, the PhDs, the faculty members that lead this, I get to help them. But also, I get to be the person that could say, I was where you are now. And what you're struggling with, I can speak to you about this. So it allowed me a chance, if you remember that brushstroke I was talking about before, a chance to be that mentor again, to have my students be the ones that, even though they may be in charge of multi-million-dollar accounts or, whatever, these are also mothers and fathers who are struggling to make their own way. And I get to, by proximity, if nothing else, I get to also be a guide. I also get to be a mentor and a servant to them. It's been wonderful throughout. Yeah,
it's amazing work. Thank you you're such an amazing storyteller. I could talk to you for a whole day. I'm so glad we made this happen, Yeah. I'm a father of 3 girls. My oldest is 6. My youngest is 1 year and like a month. And the second born is 3 years old. They're very active. They're very lovely girls. And you are a father too of, I think, 2 kids, right?
That's correct. Yeah. My oldest son is 11 now. And my daughter is my youngest, and she's 9. And I'll tell you, they, like most fathers, I guess, would say, or most parents would say, they're the, apple of my eye, and they scare me sometimes. I find myself raging when I recognize parts of myself bubbling up in them.
Yeah. Tell me more about what a father figure means to you.
There was a time just before we left Haiti and came to the States where my father and my mother separated. And I guess I bring that up because, sometimes you don't know what you miss until it's gone. But my father wasn't gone as in past. He separated, and he was developing his life in a completely different direction. So to answer your question about father figures, I'll tell you a mistake that I make today that I'm trying to work my way around and away from. I get really embedded into my work, and my household it feels fine and stable enough that I've become, a good times, I don't know how to explain it, but almost a visitor in my children's lives, especially during this COVID paradigm and working from home thing. So hours on end working, and then when I want to take a break and I'm actively thinking about it, I'll pull my daughter aside, and she knows. She'll ask me, "Hey, Daddy, can we go watch a show together?" And she knows, 9 times out of 10, of course I will take her to go watch a show together.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, my wife, who works just as hard, if not harder, she leaves the house to go to work and come back. But she's the one that's there for most of the work, the small things, the things that they may or may not remember. So all of that to say, father figures, I know what it's like to have the idea of a father and to be able to reach out and say, "Hey, Dad, can we do this?" Right. And I also know how to be the recipient of that.
Yeah.
But the key to really understanding fatherhood, I think, is understanding loss, the time in between. And I'm not sure if that's an African mentality, or if it's an immigrant mentality. We have to work. We have to somehow find a way to do both. But I do know that it's in loss that the real gem of that fatherhood is. And I think that would be pretty familiar, I would hope, to most of your listeners. The idea of my dad is here, or my dad was here, and I love him more during the times when I miss him, when I think to, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I can personally totally relate to what you're saying, because my father is still around, but I don't engage with him as much as I engage with my mom, and I don't engage with him often as much as I would like, we didn't just have that type of closeness, Yeah. But it's something that I wish, I wish I could do better, because I do exactly what you described, I know I love him when I miss him, Yeah.
My father, it's the same way. He lives in New York. In New York. And I'll tell you, we get together on the phone now, and we talk and we laugh more now than I remember doing as a young adult, as most of my childhood. And I remember visiting New York relatively recently, just a few years ago, and walking with my father and seeing habits and seeing things in him that I see in me. But there's also a sadness on the way home when I think about it even now, this idea that I know him most when it's the good times, not the normal little work. My mom is the one that I will call about the bills, or I will call about the, my son is driving me crazy again kind of a thing. My dad is the good times guy, I call him.
Yeah, that's a nice way to summarize it, man. I just feel like my dad is a comrade. I know he is there. I know sometimes we don't even talk for a year, but when we talk, it's like we've been talking every day, and it surprises me, he's just committed, and I think he understands what it is like to be a man. And I don't know if he understands what it is like to be a man in a foreign land, but, somehow, I'm just comfortable with how he likes it, Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So, as Black fathers here in America, there's a perception that Black fathers are absent, Black fathers are lazy, or we are not responsible. And, a lot of people have been reaching out to me, Simon, how can I do what you've been doing? You've been with your wife for 11 years, you seem to be taking good care of your kids. If there's a problem in the community, people reach out to me. And I felt that, the African Father in America podcast needs to be a platform where people learn about, this perception, and people discuss it openly, and also people discuss ways to change that narrative by presenting stories, real stories of people that are doing amazing as fathers. So I just wanted to get your perspectives around this.
Thank you for asking this one. I think my answer here is going to meander a little bit, and I apologize in advance, and I ask for you to indulge.
Of course.
I think an example in my house is, we use Netflix streaming services, and my children from a very, very young age, like I mentioned, my daughter asking me, "Hey, Daddy, can we watch a show together?" Well, we watched, I remember actively seeking out a show that I could watch with the kids and grow with them. And my whole family got into
show?
Yeah, I did, actually. I was, you were aware of Star Trek, and you watch Star Trek or anything like that, or
I know of it, but I haven't watched it yet. But
this is fine. This is, this is a show that's been around for more than 50 years now. And, for your listeners who haven't watched it, I highly recommend, giving it a shot. It will be, most of it will be very, very dated. But Star Trek, okay, right. And there are many forms of it, many offshoots and so on, and it's been going on for more than 50 years. But there are plenty of touchstones with that show, and if you were to go on the internet and Google and find out around it, you find out about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., a big heavyweight figure, black man figure in the United States, and a father, and his connection to the show, and Nichelle Nichols, and representing a black woman in space, in charge, the concept of it. I bring all of this up to say my children from a very young age were used to watching with me, even if they couldn't understand it, Black people being part of and being in charge in the future while they are laying there sitting with me, a black man, trying to just be in charge of my day at the same time. And I bring it up because, you were talking about that perception in the United States, and I'm thinking about one portion of this show where there is a black man who is, the captain of this, this organization on board there. And I think his name is Avery Brooks. And anyways, my children and I grew up with a vision of a black person, a black man being a father. In the show, he's a single father with a young son. And the show goes on long enough that you watch the son grow up. Anyways, this is just one example.
Right.
But to answer your question, I would say, first, parents, not just fathers, but parents, African or not, help your children envision futures and actively seek out people who look like them doing those things. So when I was a child in Haiti, like I said, I knew bankers, policemen. The idea of it, it wasn't like, as a black man in America, you can only be X. Right. I understood as a young age that you could be whatever, because by accident or whatever, I was in a country where that was the baseline.
Reality.
So now my children are used to being entertained and reading about, and even at a very young age, understanding that there is nothing out there that they cannot be a part of. Unlike you and I, most of their life, the most powerful person on the planet, the President of the United States, was a black man. I mean, that's very important.
Huge,
at least. right? For your daughters and for my children, for most of their lives, think about that. For most of their lives, the most powerful person on the planet was the president of the United States who was Black.
Right.
The possibilities are endless for them.
Right.
So then finally, for perception in the United States, I will say this.
And it's also not only in the United States, even in Kenya, it's rampant, and there are even social media groups that have been created to bash irresponsible fathers. There are even comic shows that are being done to mock irresponsible fathers, but it's specifically Black, African fathers. But the perception is that it's almost like blaming one incident and creating a stereotype and a narrative, a propaganda about Black fathers, but not also considering some of the issues that are going on within the Black family, leave alone the individual people. There are issues, structural issues that we can't even get into,
I think, I don't know, I do not know a single solution for this problem that you're mentioning, but it looks like it's a global problem. But I also feel like there's opportunity for the Black man and for the way the world perceives him. And this opportunity is in sharing your wisdom and understanding that the definition of fatherhood does not require just the biological, just the child. That there are plenty of people who have experienced the loss of a mentor, of a guide, of a servant, and who are open and will respect the words of a man who is willing to step in and help and guide. And I saw this when I was in the Navy. I see this where I work now, where in addition to me being, a biological father or doting father for my children, but I see the opportunity to pull someone aside and say, hey, young buck, this is how we've done it, and this is why. And I feel like Black fathers, African fathers, you have so many things, so many challenges facing you. But there's a strength inherent in the ones who survive this day to day. And I think that strength is also recognized, just as much as it may be, popular to ridicule or to bash the image.
Right.
I think quietly there is also a respect, whether it be Obama or Kofi Annan, that
Mandela,
right, Mandela, even the idea of Bill Cosby in the day. This has gone on for a long time. And so from a business standpoint, I would say, there's an opportunity here.
Yeah.
And so one piece of advice or one direction I would give is don't limit that just to the family. First, make that word family mean more. There are plenty of Black boys, there are plenty of Black girls that do not have someone close enough like you and I to enjoy the good times.
Right.
Feel free to do it, because that's how the perception changes.
Right. So extending fatherhood beyond our own households.
Beyond your own household, beyond your own community. Be there. You're already seen as a strong Black man. Now, there are many things that are, a detriment. There are many challenges that come with that. But there's also opportunity, and there's also wisdom there, unquestioned wisdom. Look how quickly, folks look at those stars, basketball stars and music stars and so on. Just given the right circumstances, they become paragons. They become, those icons.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think it's possible for each of us to experience that in our own way.
It's true. It's true. Thank you. So my brother, right now, we are also living in a time where, earlier on, before even today, a few days ago, I think it was Monday, we were talking as we were preparing for this conversation. We talked about how you or me could become the statistics, could become a hashtag, because white supremacy is very eminent in America now. There is a sense of fear and there's an increase in the number of violence. And I just wanted you to share with me some of your thoughts of how you think we can support each other better,
It is interesting, yeah, you're right. When we spoke last, I think I shared with you a little anecdote of me speaking to some of my students, and us having a conversation. And of course, I have my title, I have my suit, I have my tie, I have their respect, I have all of these things in the space. But I really am one DUI away, or one, being pulled over. If I don't shave and I don't look the way I do or whatever, you catch me in a bad light, and that could be the end of everything that I have worked for. And it's just the plight of men, of Black men, and this is what we face.
It's so terrible, man.
But recently, I have to say, I swing back and forth between despair and hope, because we do have this.
That's exactly like me. That's why I'm laughing.
This list of hashtags.
Yeah.
Every one of them represents this tragic story of, things that would not be accepted if you were white. It just, I've seen in America, I've seen white people, mobilized over the indignity or perceived indignity of being forced to wear a mask.
Right.
Meanwhile, you have the Black man who lives and dies under this perception that is never ending, and is being told to wait, be calm, wait. And so between despair and hope, and since our last conversation, I've had conversations with brothers and sisters, white brothers and sisters, folks who want to be allies, folks who want to be helpful. And I don't have any wisdom to share with them other than recognize the world as it is, not as you want it to look. Recognize the differences between what you've been told and what is actually happening. Recognize, that someday you will go and this reality will be your legacy, and you won't be able to come back and say, I didn't know. Right? So, and that's all I have is for me to try to keep my children safe, for me to represent my people, whatever that means, my family, whatever that means, represented in the best light that I can. And, to hope and pray that those folks who are privileged, who don't have to worry about that, will take the time and actually recognize. Perhaps this is the moment.
Recognize and accept it, and do something about it. Thank you. Thank you very much. How can people stay connected with you and, beyond our conversation today? Are you on social media, or do you have a website where people can learn more about some of the work you have coming up or currently?
I am incredibly humble, almost to a fault. I thought about it. I've avoided as much social media as I can. I'm all about the one-on-one. On LinkedIn, on the professional website, if you were to look for Ariel Rosemond Solutions, is that's where you will find me, and that's my professional face that I have. But I'm also I'm a board member, the Business Engagement Committee for the United Way of King County.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a board chair, regional committee chair for Contemplative Leaders in Action for Seattle. So, and there I help mentor, young professionals throughout the region. And so, it gets to the point, if you want to Google me, you'll find me at Seattle and most of my contacts, Seattle University.
Yeah.
You'll find me if you need.
Yeah, Ariel, it really means a lot to me that you made the time for us to talk today,
Thank you, Simon. I am humbled.
Yeah, I feel so nourished, I feel like something just happened to me. I just had a big meal and I'm just ready to, have a great evening.
I want to say thank you for your work. Continue to raise your children. You have no greater fans than your listeners, me included. We'll survive and we will thrive.
Yeah.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you so much. And thank you to all the listeners and supporters of the African Father in America. Today, I was talking to my brother Ariel, who is a wonderful, wonderful human being. And, we talked about his story, his upbringing. We talked about his time in Haiti, his time in New York, his time in the military, and his work as an executive leadership development. His work as a father, his thoughts about the perception around Black fathers and, how Black fathers can support each other. And also he shared with you how you can connect with him, especially on LinkedIn. Again, thank you so much for, your support for the African Father in America. My brother, thank you and have a wonderful evening.
Yes, good night.
Good night. Hold on.
African Father in America. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. African Father in